In the last session, we looked at 10 essentials that we, as men pursuing authentic manhood, need to embrace as we live out our biblical blueprint of work. It would be time very well spent to go back in your training guide and review the spread that illustrates our blueprint. Men, it will bless you to master this material. Now, in this session, we're going to turn our attention to a number of things that can keep us from living out God's vision in our work. We call them work traps. Traps that can distract us and even prevent us from living out our blueprint.
I work in IT in a startup in Silicon Valley.
I'm a software engineer in the healthcare IT industry. Basically what I do is I help doctors get the information that they need to help people.
I'm in the arts and music, so that's what I do.
The skills that I'm working with are things that I've been doing my entire life.
It's really interesting coming into work every day and kind of seeing all the challenges and all the opportunities that we have. It's a really interesting field, and I really think that I'm helping people.
So basically what I do is I draw the pictures and then make screen prints of them, buy the shirts, print them on, and then take them out there and thank God people love them and they buy them.
I really like talking to people, helping people out with what they need when it comes to computers and configuring things that they don't know how to do. And it's really exciting to see people accomplish tasks that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do.
What I really love is overcoming challenges. It's incredibly rewarding.
The excitement about it is the process, the creative process, because that's a healing process.
I've actually switched jobs 3 times in the past year. A lot of that being for money.
I definitely work to make money, but that's not the only reason. I think that the work is fulfilling, and the money is, for me, just sort of a side benefit. Don't tell my bosses that.
Doing annoying, repetitive tasks over and over again. Sometimes people don't understand what I'm doing, and they get confused and ask questions.
When there's uncertainty, when I don't know what I should be doing or how I should really be going about it.
The frustration sometimes is, say if you have 3 people wanting 3 different sizes, right? They really want something, but for some reason you have all the wrong sizes.
Okay, guys, today we're talking about the work-related traps that we need to be aware of and avoid. These work traps can rob us of our joy, our influence, and our integrity. They've caused disappointment and wreaked havoc in the lives of just too many men. And if we're not aware of them, and if we don't steer clear of them, they will derail us from our bigger and more satisfying vision of work. Now, there are 6 work traps that we need to be aware of. We're going to take a close look at each one. So let's get started. Here is the first one, the unrealistic expectations trap. Some of us go naively into work, assuming that it should always go our way and be stress-free, or that we'll just glide right up the job ladder. Maybe we think that we'll continue to make more rather than less money throughout our career, or that we will always be loved and accepted by our bosses, our employees, or coworkers. Some of us are shocked when things don't go so smoothly, when we're passed over for a promotion, aren't treated fairly, maybe even let go. When our work doesn't meet our expectations, we can easily give in to disappointment, bitterness, and cynicism. And when you become cynical and pessimistic, well, you become ineffective in living out a gospel-centered vision for your work. That's why we have to approach work with a realistic perspective. Remember, the Bible teaches us that Adam and Eve's disobedience in Genesis 3 wasn't just an isolated event without ramifications. Their disobedience affected us all and introduced brokenness and suffering and sin into the world. This brokenness affects our work. We learn in Genesis 3:17 and 18, that as a result of Adam's sin, work will now involve painful toil. We learn that mankind's endeavors will be frustrated by thorns and thistles, and that by the sweat of our brow, we'll have to earn our keep. Tim Keller puts it this way. He says that in a world broken by sin, all work and human effort are marked by frustration and a lack of fulfillment. Work is not itself a curse, but it now lies with all other aspects of human life under the curse of sin. In other words, because of sin, work is now going to include some of these thorns and thistles, frustrations like fatigue or disappointment and resistance, temptations or difficult coworkers, impossible bosses, or frustrating clients. And during our careers, most of us will experience some setbacks, seasons of fruitlessness, and maybe even unemployment or times of failure. The answer isn't to become pessimistic, bitter, and cynical, or just to keep changing jobs when things don't go our way. Authentic men manage the tension between a biblical vision of work and the realities of a broken world. Hey, whether it's in marriage, parenting, friendships, or work, authentic men strive for what God intended, but they're aware of the harsh realities caused by living in a world filled with sin. They are prepared for the battle. They aren't overwhelmed by the failure of others or even their own failure. They have healthy expectations for work. They understand that there's going to be pain and resistance and struggle, and they try to be sources of life and redemption in the midst of a broken world.
As you guys know, I'm assistant manager over at Carter Supermarkets. And I've been in the grocery business my whole life, basically. I started off as a bag boy and then cashier, and worked my way up. Just at the family supermarkets. Chuck's, my father-in-law, pulled me aside one day and said that he wanted me to take over for him. Chuck moved out. He retired, moved out of his office, and I moved in. And things went pretty great at first. It was terrific. I'd have meetings with my employees and had a plan. And, things would be going good, but good old Chuck, he'd be back once, maybe twice a week, and he'd tell the employees something almost completely different. I didn't know what to do. Anyway, as weeks went on, it just got worse and worse. The employees weren't happy. I wasn't happy. Seems like our customer noticed and they weren't happy. Our sales were going down. At that point, I think I realized I had gone into this deal with maybe some unrealistic and probably unhealthy expectations.
The next trap is probably the most widespread and pervasive work trap among men. In today's work-obsessed, overworked world, this is a trap that can easily entangle us. We call it the significance trap. And this is when a man attaches most of his significance, his meaning, his identity to his work. He lets his performance on the job or his job title completely define his contentment, his purpose, his security, and his hope. When he's performing and doing, well, he feels okay. His only gauge for measuring his meaning or significance is based on whether he hits his numbers or he reaches his work goals. Performance and success at work have become like a drug for him. It's the main source of his significance. Guys, this has become an epidemic in many modern societies. It's become the standard by which a man measures himself. And it's why the first question most often asked between men in our culture is, what do you do? And guys, some of us take either way too much pride or derive way too much shame in how we answer that question. Listen to how one man described work's role in modern culture. We are the first culture in history where men define themselves solely by performing and achieving in the workplace. It is the way you become somebody and feel good about your life. There has never been more psychological, social, and emotional pressure in the marketplace than there is at this very moment. Can you relate to that? Has your identity and significance become wrapped up in your job? Is the line between who you are and what you do blurred? Have you become a human doing rather than a human being? Is your work identity more important to you than your relationship with your Maker? Now, don't misunderstand, okay? We've already established that work is important. It's very important. It's a part of God's plan for your life, but it was never designed to be your main identity or to save you. It just can't bear that weight. Only Jesus can do that. Only Jesus. What He has done for you and what He says about you is a sure foundation for your significance and your identity. Authentic men constantly remind themselves that they are perfectly loved and accepted in Christ, period. They don't need their work or success to justify their existence or prove that they are somebody. They create a healthy distance, let's call it a gospel distance, between their core identity and their work so that they're actually free to engage work robustly, to succeed wildly, or even fail miserably without their performance touching their core identity and shaking the foundation of who they are in Christ. The main identity of an authentic man doesn't come from his work. It comes from the fact that he has a personal relationship with the Creator of the universe.
Well, you all know I'm a senior vice president in my investment firm. I grew up without my father, and we had nothing. I put myself through school. I got a scholarship for my MBA. And I had a significant opportunity at my current investment firm to be an intern. I saw a good chance to be something and to have it all. I wanted the big clients. I wanted my face to be on the billboard. I wanted them to know who I was. So I took my opportunity. As that intern, I went in and I studied and I learned. And I became big time. I mean, it was great. This one particular night, I had closed with a client and was on my way home, late as usual. But when I got there, the house was empty. No one was there. My wife wasn't there. The kids weren't there. And as I sat there in that empty house, for the first time, I realized that my drive for significance had left me with nothing.
Men move to Silicon Valley for work. Now work is good. God created us to work hard for His glory with the strengths and gifts and talents that He's given us, and He wants us to be ambitious in working hard for His fame and His name. But a great danger happens when you put work at the center of your life rather than God and His glory and His gospel. We've seen this issue with single men, married men, men with kids, men nearing retirement. It's the massive difference between working for your identity rather than working from your identity. And our culture teaches men to work for an identity. The harder you work, the more successful you are, the more you do in your career, then finally you'll have that identity as a man and you'll be somebody. But that's slavery to live under that kind of pressure. Instead, we want to teach men how to work from their identity, identity given to them by Jesus based on grace, the fact that Jesus loves you, the fact that you're created in God's image. We want men to be secure in that identity as a son of God, and then to work hard from that identity. A great damage happens in men's lives when they're working for an identity, when work's at the center of their life. What happens is marriage. That's really the first thing that gets damaged. A marriage gets terribly damaged. I was recently with a couple where a man, he's been putting in 80-hour work weeks for years. Now, the first year, the wife didn't say a whole lot. Second year, she started speaking up a little bit more. Year 3, it's crushing her, and they're seeing irreparable damage that's now in that marriage, that they're trying to work, bitterness, resentment, years of neglect that they're trying to repair. A second area where real damage is caused is in terms of friendships. We're not created to live life alone. That's not good. We're meant as men to live life in community with other men and with great friendships where we are both known and loved by other guys. But when a man puts work at the center of his life, he neglects friendships. He doesn't have time for friendship. And all of a sudden, a man will wake up 5 years later and realize he doesn't have any real friends. So he has no one to go to talk about the crises, the trauma, the troubles that are in his life. He's left trying to navigate life alone. So friendships are left. And then really a third area is with the kids. Now, a man thinks when he has young kids that he'll be okay. I've got these young kids. I can spend a lot of hours at the office. They don't need me. But what a man finds is when his kids reach those teenage years and he's been neglecting them for several years by putting work at the center of his life, those kids start to really outwardly rebel. The man tries to step in and repair his relationship with his kids, but they don't trust him because they've never been close with dad because he's been gone at the office all the time and hasn't had time to spend time with them and to be with them. So we want to be men who work hard, but we don't want to be men who make work too important and put it more important than God, than our marriages, than our friendships, than our children.
A third trap to avoid is the money trap. This trips a guy up when he has a warped perspective of the money he earns. The money trap can show up in a man's life in at least 3 different ways. The first way is through materialism. But what exactly is materialism? Well, it's when a man defines himself not by his production, but by his consumption. It seems to have become an epidemic in our modern culture. Sociologist Michael Kimmel tells us that in consumption-oriented economies, men experience their masculinity less as providers and protectors and more as consumers. You see, materialism promises us that the biggest house, the newest car, the fanciest toys, the shiniest rims, or whatever will make us feel good about ourselves and make us appear to be a man of consequence in the eyes of others. Materialism can trap us into this mindset where the primary purpose of our work is just to work more and more, even at the expense of everything else. Why? Well, so we can make more and more money, so we can have more and more stuff, so we can look important and be happy. But guys, materialism won't satisfy. Pretty soon, the high from that new purchase will wear off. It's like Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income." At best, materialism is just lighter fluid. It may produce a temporary flash, but it will never result in a lasting flame that satisfies your soul. Materialism is also the antithesis to our create and cultivate mandate. As we've already learned, God calls us primarily to give, to bless others, not just consume. We're called to add value and give life, not just buy and take. We're called to steward the money we earn, not just spend it on ourselves, trying to impress others. The second way the money trap can show up in a man's life is through inappropriate debt. This is when a man unnecessarily or unwisely borrows money he doesn't have. Inappropriate debt is often the close cousin of materialism. We borrow money we don't have so we can live a materialistic lifestyle we can't afford, so we can impress people who don't really even care about us. But here's the real problem. Debt robs us of the opportunity to be a blessing, to give life to others. It robs us of our financial freedom and our mental focus. Proverbs 22:7 says it very clearly. It says, "The borrower is the slave of the lender." Hey, show me a man covered in debt, and I'll show you a man in shackles and limited in his ability to bless others. Now, of course, there are times when debt might be appropriate. High medical bills or other extenuating circumstances can make debt a necessary thing. Sometimes debt can be used to fund investments that can lead to profit. But regardless, debt should always be approached with wisdom and some trepidation. And consumer debt, debt primarily for consumption, for something that depreciates rather than appreciates in value, should be limited as much as possible. The final money trap that we need to avoid is actually the fear of money. Now, this isn't a contradiction of what we've been teaching. Many of us have gotten the notion that money, in and of itself, is a bad thing. But the Bible never teaches that money itself is evil. It teaches that the love of money is evil. You see, God used rich people throughout the Bible. He used kings like Solomon and David, governors like Joseph, businessmen like Zacchaeus. Money can be a blessing to you, your family, and those in need. One of the reasons we work is to earn money so we can bless others with it. And it may be that you have a skill set that allows you to build some wealth. You should neither be arrogant nor ashamed of that. Instead, use your skill to generate money so you can give life to others, so you can have a bigger influence, so you can be a bigger difference maker in the world for the glory of God. God may allow you to be a man of great means, and if so, well, you have a great responsibility to steward what has been entrusted to you. So guys, don't be afraid of money. Just be certain that your ultimate hope and happiness is in the life-giving grace of Jesus and not in the size of your bank account. Be grateful that God has given you the ability to build wealth and use it to bless others.
Well, as you guys know, I'm a high school principal. So most of my career I've spent taking care of the kids. But my position involved hiring a contractor for the school. The campus was kind of run down and we needed new facilities, so I interviewed a lot of options, a lot of contractors, and all of a sudden this one contractor came to me and he had the lowest bid, but on top of that, he offered me a 20% cut of the deal in cash. Nobody would know, just me and him. And so I took the money. It looked real good in my bank account. I felt good too, felt secure. So, I was on top of the world. Then I got the call. Before I knew it though, I'd lost my job, I lost my reputation, and lost all my respect.
A fourth work trap stems from the temptation for men to compartmentalize their lives. As one Psychology Today author stated, men have an uncanny and dangerous ability to compartmentalize their lives into mutually exclusive rooms whose walls have no windows or doors. In other words, it's easy for us as guys to treat our lives like a series of separate rooms, just closed off from one another. There's a room for our work life, a room for our family life, a room for our spiritual life, and so on. And it's easy for us to keep those rooms separate, never opening up the walls. Well, that creates a compartmentalized man, a man who is a different person when he's in church than when he's at work, maybe mistreating or even being cruel to his employees. He's so compartmentalized that he can't see the inconsistency. Authentic men live with integrity. And integrity literally means being whole and undivided. Authentic men integrate their faith into their work lives. They see their work as one of the main platforms they've been given to live out their faith. They let others experience the life-giving Spirit of Jesus through them by how they treat people and care for others. Every man has different roles and responsibilities, different hats he wears, but authentic men bring the integrity of who they are into each of those various roles. The fifth trap that we want to look at is the sex trap. And hey, if we're honest, this shouldn't surprise any of us. We're guys, right? We can all be tempted here. The sex trap is when a man allows lust to invade his work life. He inappropriately flirts with his female coworkers, or he engages with virtual women via pornography. Guys, we've got to be aware of this trap. Be afraid of it. Treat it like kryptonite. The Bible tells us to run from it, not only because it's wrong in and of itself, but also because it'll cost you your job or even your career. Don't sacrifice your career at the altar of sexual harassment or using company computers or company time for inappropriate activity. Authentic men don't use their work computer, or really any computer for that matter, to go to some inappropriate website and engage in sexual fantasy. They're careful with the things they talk about, the kind of jokes they tell. They don't make inappropriate comments to a female coworker, an employee, or a boss. In fact, authentic men proactively create an environment where women can feel safe and comfortable, where they're respected and where they're valued. The statistics on this stuff is staggering. Listen to this. 1 out of 4 women have experienced some form of sexual harassment in the workplace. 70% of online pornography is accessed during the 9 to 5 business hours, and 20% from an office workstation.